Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Estrella virtual visit series. My name is Allison Campbell with Estrella Consulting, and I'm so excited to welcome Freddie Glitman from George Washington University. Our virtual visit series is designed to introduce you all to a variety of colleges and allow for you to get to know the institutions and their staff in a more personal way. So thank you, Freddie, so much for joining us.
Allison, thank you so much for having me today.
I'm so glad that you are here. I know that we were talking about how much Christina, who's the owner and founder of Estrella, absolutely loves you, and she was so excited to have you be our first guest for the 2025-26 cycle. So I appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate that. Hopefully, I'll either set the bar high or I'll set the bar so low that everyone else will just blow it out of the water. We'll see what happens.
I'm sure it will be great. So I know we were catching up on this before we started recording, but can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been at GW?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So that's where Christina and I have a strong relationship. I know her triplets were from Buenos Aires, but I was a first generation student, made my way from Argentina to the United States back in 2007, which only seemed like 6 months ago. And I was fortunate enough to receive my bachelor's and my master's from my alma mater, but I made the switch over to GW back on May 9th, 2023.
Great. Well, I'm so excited for you to share a little bit more about GW. So, if you don't mind, for those
Yeah.
people that are watching this, can you explain a little bit about GW, where it's located, a little bit about your enrollment, and the type of institution it is, and anything that we would need to know? You think that's important?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So George Washington University, we were chartered as an act of Congress back in 1821. The concept was to bring some of the best and most brilliant minds throughout the United States to a centralized location where we can have conversations on civility and discourse, to say the least. We're a medium-sized school. We're about 11,000 students undergrad. We're about 15,000 graduates, so a total of 26,000 students. But really, one of the unique things that makes GW different from other schools in the United States is before you love GW, you really have to fall in love with Washington, D.C. That is one of those key aspects that students are going to have to understand, specifically where we're located. We're 3 blocks from the White House. We're 4 blocks from the State Department. We're about 5 blocks from the Lincoln Memorial. Really, DC is your playground, and that's not common for a college student, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. I know my husband's cousin went to GW and she graduated about 3 years ago. And she said that too. She's like, it's definitely one of those places like if you love the hustle and the bustle of the big city and the urban environment and just constant activity, it's awesome. If you're looking for something that's like very traditional, green space, quiet and quaint, it's not going to be for you. So that's why we do these types of things to really highlight, what type of college environment would be perfect for the right person. So thank you for giving a little bit of background. And if you don't mind just saying your role at GW, what
Sure.
in the recruitment cycle, like what type of students are you recruiting or like what area do you cover?
No, absolutely. So I'm the Associate Director of Undergraduate Admission. My roles are specifically working in our backyard, which is DC. I also represent GW over in North Carolina and Puerto Rico. And I think to your point, Allison, about what type of student do we recruit, and this is my personal opinion, right? I think somewhere along the way in higher education, we became too focused on the numerical statistics. And that's one of the things I appreciate about GW is we're really trying to see who is the student as well as outside of academics. We're a school that receives about 27,000 apps a year. I would say that majority of those students, if we were to be black and white and say this GPA and this test score gets you in and this one doesn't, majority of the students are going to be offered admission. One of the things that we really do at GW is we focus on that social side. I don't know if you had a chance to read, but there's a great book called Be Mindful College Applicant by Belinda Chu. And I think back in 2019, they did a psychological study to determine what is the best indicator of success for a student in college. It's not GPA, it's not test scores, but it's that sense of optimism. So when we're reviewing applicants from all over the world, we're trying to see them based on the context of their school. I always say 51%, we do look at academics. We need to make sure that you're prepared for the academic rigor at GW. But that 49% is who are you outside of the classroom? So many times students don't seem to understand that when they're in high school, they're there 35 hours a week. but in college, you're only in class 15 hours a week. So we're looking for that student that says, all right, I want to take full advantage of GW, of Washington, D.C. Just to give you two examples of my favorite things. So last year, still this year, but in 2024 and 2025, GW was one of the highest recipients in providing Fulbright scholars. We had about 13 that year. Or I just found out a few
Mm.
weeks ago that we had the youngest petitioner of, and I'm going to mispronounce it, certiorari to the Supreme Court, that they want to talk a little bit more about immigration policies. So in essence, who are we looking at GW is a student that understands that academics is an aspect, but it's also what are you passionate about? Who are you outside the classroom? And there really isn't that perfect formula. You could be at a large public high school and be involved in two or three things, and that's completely fine. But maybe you're at a small private school where the extracurricular activities don't call your interest, and maybe you founded a nonprofit or you did community service outside of the high school. There's no secret formula on how to get into GW. And this is the vein of my existence. And I apologize that I know I'm going a little bit further with this response.
That's okay.
I always hated the term holistic approach in higher education. One of the things that GW has really taught me is we review from a complementary lens, meaning we will look at all of the documents and imagine a student's life is a jigsaw puzzle. I think that's the fun part of my job. I have to figure out what piece of the puzzle is going to better tell your story. Is it your family responsibilities? Is it your essay? Is it your letter of recommendation? Is it that rigor? And how does that align with our mission and vision at GW?
Yeah, that's great. I think you definitely hit on what we speak to a lot of our students at Estrella is, first, um, depth over breadth. Like we want to make sure, like you don't have to be involved in every single thing. We would rather find students that have one or two or three extracurriculars or activities, or like you even said, even not even to overlook the family responsibilities that one might have. But how invested are you in the things that you're passionate about? Maybe it is taking care of a grandparent or taking care of a little sibling, and that doesn't allow you to, have the fancy internships or be involved in all the clubs or the athletics. Like that's a very real responsibility that some students have. But like you said, what you're passionate about, and we also encourage our students to really look into being like lifelong learners and just really engaged in the things that are interesting to them and not really like shying away from those things that even if they're, they might seem like not traditional or unorthodox. Like if you're really into water skiing or geodes or politics or whatever it is, like get involved in that stuff and just make it more of a deep involvement versus being involved in a lot of things at a very surface level. So I appreciate you saying that because we say it a lot, and we just want to make sure that our students hear it from someone else as well. So I appreciate that. So as you've been, I mean, I know you're kind of like wrapping up, getting everybody into starting, in August or whatnot, but we're already at the start of this cycle for the class of 2026. Can you speak to maybe this past cycle? Because I know you don't have the information upcoming, but what were you seeing as far as admission trends? Like, where are your students coming from? Are you seeing a particular major or program that's become really popular at GW?
Yeah, so absolutely, that's a great question. And I think one of the unique things that I found at GW is the students aren't just focused on one aspect. And I think that's what makes my job interesting. I mean, statistics show that 87% of students are going to change their major their first year in college. So what we do at GW is when students apply, they're not applying to a major, they're applying to one of our 7 schools. We're very fortunate that we've always been known on the international front as well. And one of our institutional priorities is geographical diversity. We know students coming from all parts of the United States, whether it be the East Coast, Midwest, the West Coast, the southern end of the United States. They're all coming in with different perspectives that really add culture and character to the classroom. One of the things that has given me a lot of optimism for the future is we saw a huge increase in applications for students interested in our Milken Institute of Public Health. We also saw a good amount of students apply to one of our schools, which is the Corcoran School of the Arts. So the arts isn't a dead realm anymore. That whole concept of the starving artist doesn't exist anymore. And I love seeing students that are coming in for, and to your point about some under the radar majors, our health data science, I think is one of those under the radar majors, but it's nice seeing a student that can major in that, but also minor in theater. but also have a concentration in public policy. So we're very fortunate at the end of the day that we've stayed consistent as far as trends are concerned, but we're also happy that we saw a trend increase in public health and in the arts.
That's great. I love that. I think most people, think of GW, they're thinking of government, public policy, international business, and especially like just speaking to your location and how important that is. But I think public health, that's huge, obviously. And again, where you're located definitely would be an opportunity to leverage that. But the arts, that definitely surprised me that you
Me
said
too.
that. That's great. And you said that a student can pick, like you said, it could be a public health or yeah, public health major, but then also maybe an arts double major or a minor. Like, are you able to kind of intertwine your passions? Like, if you think that there's maybe a more practical major, but you're really passionate about the arts, could you do both?
Short answer is yes, but the long answer is what we do at GW is we're really focused on building relationships. So when students sit with their academic advisors, we're going to ask them, disregard your major. What are your passions? What are your interests? And let's figure out different options for you. Because a student may say, you know what, I want to major in international business and minor in economics, but I also have a passion for theater. Great, let's get you involved in our different clubs and organizations. We're always trying to figure out how can you be fulfilled socially at GW while still aligning with your academic pursuits.
Okay, that's great. Is there a major that you feel is maybe under the radar, like one that you feel like is just like a hidden gem that GW does really well that people might not know about?
Yeah, so for our Milken Institute, it's definitely health data science. And then the one that I'm fascinated by, it's under our Columbian College of Arts and Sciences. It's called Psychological and Brain Sciences. So it's a combination of psychology, meeting neurodiversity, meeting behavioral science, and encompassing that into this generation.
That's great. That's really cool. I said I'm typing some of this stuff because I want to be able to have notes for our students and our team. So thank you for sharing that. Um, as far as we were talking a little bit about recruitment of students, do you track or consider demonstrated interest?
So I've been in the profession since 2011. There's very few schools that I'm aware of that don't track demonstrated interest, and those are usually the large state schools because of the
Mhm.
magnitude of the applications that they receive. The way that we track demonstrated interest at GW is we want to see, did you visit campus? When we were at the high school, did you have a chance to connect with us? Did you meet us at a college fair? We love students that visit campus because ultimately, when you're on campus, you will realize if I love DC, I'm gonna love GW. But you can't love GW and not like DC. It's so integrated into our aspect. But we have a unique admission practice in which when we review applications, we don't necessarily look how many emails did you open? How long were you on websites? How many emails did
Okay.
you send us? We're trying to see what is your story? And we always go back to a student's application should be a testament of who they've been the last 4 years and the potential for the next 4 years. So there's never an instance where demonstrated interest and sending that extra email put the student over one way or the other.
Okay. Okay. I get what you're saying there. And I think too, I mean, we always encourage our students, especially like we know that it's not, you know, not every student's going to have the ability to get to Washington, whether it's time or money constraints. Is there any way, for a student that might have some sort of financial constraint that do you have any like types of programs that would bring students to campus that, could they reach out to a counselor at GW? Because if they're really strongly considering it, but like you said, a visit would really be beneficial to let them know if it's going to be a right fit for them. Like, do you have anything like that available?
I I wish I could say that we had a certain program that we can fly students in from all over the world to GW to get a sense of who they are. But unfortunately, we're not able to do that at this time just because of housing constraints, right? When you're in Washington, DC, housing is a constraint. So one of the things that we're trying to do is, for example, if you have students in Ohio or Los Angeles or Seattle, Washington, we want them to connect with us so we can put them in contact with either current students, faculty members. We want to make sure that when they commit to GW on May 1st, they're confident with their response.
Mhm. Okay, that's fair, definitely. Which leads me actually to my next question. Because you are an urban campus in a wonderful neighborhood, which I'm sure is extremely pricey to live in DC, can you talk to us a little bit about living on campus? And I know let's start. let's start with my first question. You have two separate campuses.
Correct.
So
Yes,
can you talk real quickly to the two separate campuses?
absolutely. So per year, we roughly enroll about 2,500 students. Three-fourths of our incoming freshman class will be at that Boggy Bottom campus, which is when you think of Washington, D.C., that's the ideal situation, right? 3 blocks from the White House, not too far from the Lincoln Memorial. Our second campus is called Mount Vernon. It's about 1.2 miles away from campus. Used to be an all women's college. We acquired them about 10, 15 years ago because we needed additional resources. We needed additional
Okay.
housing. We needed more fields. And we also realized that we were attracting a large number of students from rural backgrounds or even suburban backgrounds that while they love GW and they love DC, they still needed roughly a year or so to adjust to that city life. But where we've adapted our philosophy is our Mount Vernon campus now houses what we call living and learning communities. So that could be
Okay.
our honors program, our women's leadership program, Civic House, which is really focused on community service and other aspects that way. We want to make sure that regardless of where students are, they're building a community of individuals that have their philosophy and their mindset.
So Mount Vernon campus is more living, learning communities, and it's a
Yes.
little bit more, I'm gonna say rural, because it's really probably not rural, but rural in comparison to the Foggy Bottom campus.
Yeah, I would say
And
it's like that traditional liberal arts college that you will find almost in any state. It's that type of environment, green grass, 3 to 4 residence halls. So it's that traditional liberal arts realm.
okay, and you said 75% of the incoming freshman class will be at the Foggy Bottom campus,
Correct.
correct? Okay. Is there a residency requirement?
There is. So for the first 2 years, we do require students to live on campus. One of the things that really attracted me to GW is the guest speakers that they bring in. So we actually partnered up with Chef Jose Andres, and we developed something interesting called the Global Food Institute program. So we're trying to eradicate world hunger through public policy, but we also understand that we have a high percentage of first generation students. We also have a very high uh, rate of Pell Grant recipients. Food
Okay.
insecurity is a real thing in the United States. So for the first year, we offer an unlimited meal plan that students have to accept, and we roughly make about 52,000 meals a week. But also building that support within the first generation cohort, we're fortunate enough that we're graduating them at an 88% rate.
That's awesome. So you have to qualify for that program that you spoke of with the unlimited meal plan, correct?
No, that is a requirement for every single student that first year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
Every first year student.
yeah, and to your point about the housing constraints, we also do not permit students to have cars on campus. So within their cost of attendance, they're given something called the U Pass, and they'll have unlimited access to our metro system, which is our subway and the bus. So if they have to do an internship, go see a guest speaker, if they want to fly out of DCA or Dulles, we want to make sure that transportation won't be an issue for any of these students.
I love that you do kind of like an orientation to that as well, because I think that's very overwhelming. I just had mentioned to you, I was just in New York City a couple of days ago, and that's a lot, just to, if you from a rural or suburban area and to have to depend on public transport, it's just very intimidating. So I love that you're kind of like forcing the students to do that and they feel supported and empowered to do that as well. And that's like just like a lifelong learning skill and it's transferable to any big city. You'll be probably more open to like a study abroad somewhere if you feel like you can navigate public transport. So that's really cool. Um, as far as like going back to kind of residency, because I get this question a lot when I have students that are interested in like the major metropolitan areas, the parents want to know like, so if you have a 2-year residency requirement and they know that that is the case, that their student's going to have housing, what about that third and fourth year? Do you have enough housing for third and fourth year students to stay there, or are they kind of sent off to find housing elsewhere in DC?
Sure. So from my experience, the student that wants to be on campus their junior and senior year, they're going to have housing here.
Okay.
Those students that get that traditional, I want to be off campus the last 2 years of my college experience, our housing and residence life office actually has great partnerships with local apartments in the area.
Okay.
I also think, Allison, having that Metro card, you may have a group of 3 or 4 students that they're going to say, I'm going to live in Maryland or Virginia, but they're 3 or 4 metro stops away. So we're giving them that access as well. So if they want to be in DC, we have partnerships. They're looking for that Maryland, Virginia area. We have that Metro Pass that will give them unlimited access to and from campus.
Okay. And that might make it a little bit more affordable too, because they
Yeah.
feel like just, parents that are like, well, I know that they're going to have housing those first 2 years, and the third and fourth year, like I don't have 2 grand a month, or whatever it might be for my student to have housing. And, just a worry, that's kind of like sometimes let's say the negative, for some families that might be more concerned about finances is helping their student find a place to live. So I love that there are partnerships available and that it's kind of an ingrained thing that juniors and seniors, they might find other places to live and they can kind of stick together and utilize that UPass. So I appreciate that. You mentioned the living learning community at Mount Vernon, and you mentioned an honors program. So that's something we're always interested in learning a little bit more about. So if you've got either, an honors program for, those types of students, and also if you have any type of student support for neurodiverse students, can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is my alma mater didn't have an honors program. So when I joined GW, I really wanted to get an in-depth analysis of what it really meant. So if your families are looking at GW's honors program, the first thing they'll have to know is that there are supplemental questions to the application. And our students could be offered admission to GW, but they potentially may not be offered admission to the honors program. If
Yeah.
the honors program chooses not to move forward with an applicant, that will not impact their general admission at GW. What I notice is the students in the honors program have to understand that it is for those students that have a liberal arts foundation, but what I call a social justice heart, to say the least. So their experiences aren't just in the classroom, but it's outside. A few things that I just made a quick note on is almost every Friday, they have a lunch and learn series. They recently had a policy law government relationship alumni panel. Food is a big thing. DC is a foodie culture, so we also have sessions called Food for Thought. But what I appreciate is with the honors program, they've tailored the traditional liberal arts into today's society. So I'll give an example. Like one of the courses our students take, it's called Wisdom. And we ask these students, so what's happiness? And how can I live a life that will make me happy? We ask them, what is justice? How can you reshape institutions? There's also probably the course I would have taken. It's called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it's understanding the UN development goals and how is that aligning country by country. So we're challenging students, great, you have a strong liberal arts foundation, but what's the social justice behind it?
Mhm.
So for neurodiverse students, I think the key thing that families have to understand is that whatever accommodations they receive in high school, they potentially may not receive every accommodation when they're in college. We typically always recommend a psychoeducational evaluation that isn't older than 3 years old. But
Yeah.
at GW, although all of our courses are taught by faculty, we also have graduate assistants and teachers assistants in those areas to tell the student, hey, I know you're struggling a little bit right now in physics, but you have to take physics this year because next year you're going to take calculus too, and that's going to set the foundation for you. So it's good to hear from other students, like you have to do A, B, and C to get to D. But I asked one of my colleagues, hey, tell me a little bit about your children's experience at GW. So we do have executive coaching opportunities through our Office of
Okay.
Student Success, and that's actually free of charge. We also
Oh, that's
provide
great.
tutoring services free of charge. I would say, Allison, and I don't think this is special to GW, but it's important for the student to advocate for themselves and to tell us what the accommodations and to meet with our DSS office, our Disability of Student Services, so we can
Mhm.
set up those accommodations that they can share with their faculty. Because we can't help students if we don't know that they need help.
Definitely. And I feel like, the one of the beautiful things about working with an Estrella consultant is that, we get to know our students really well. So, um, we get that one-on-one time. We really, understand, what makes them tick and what, their superpowers are and maybe what their struggles are. So when we do find, the best fit college for them, and they've decided to go there and attend, we really advocate for them, in April and May, once they've put that deposit down and they've started to build that bridge with the admissions department or, the bursar or enrollment, whoever, like get that process started now. Once you've put your deposit down, let them know that, you might be seeking services and who should I connect to when you're at orientation, finding that office, going to introduce yourself. And I mean, we have levels of students that are, very strong self-advocates, and then we have students that are a little bit more embarrassed or, don't want to do that. But we always tell them too, we would much rather you seek that out on the front end than, go for through the first month of school and get a D and an F because you don't have extended time or you can't focus or you're having a hard time with, note taking or whatever it is, or even executive functioning. So that really caught my attention because I think that's something that's definitely overlooked. Like if you've
Yeah.
just been always very smart and you've been able to cram at the last second, but now the college level work is 5 times harder than what you've ever experienced in high school. That's a shock to the system, to have to really prepare and they don't know how to study or how to read, um, in the sense, like in an academic sense. So I appreciate you saying that, like, you have to be your own self-advocate. I think we do a good job of really encouraging those students and like we've identified that they might have some struggles or some challenges and, finding that office right away, connecting with an advisor, letting your advisor know, so you don't start off on the wrong foot right when you start.
No,
So
absolutely. Even what we do is once we give them the recommendations, we tell them, go see your faculty member and give them this document so they can also get to know you as well.
yeah, that's a great idea. That's great. So, all right, let's do two more questions here. We've
Sure.
been really chugging along. I've got a lot of great notes, and I think we've got a lot of good intel. Um, so this is something that I think has become a little bit more common as well. So because GW is competitive for admission, we have been seeing a lot of like alternate start programs where, from like a yield perspective, maybe you have a student that's an incoming freshman and they have to start at a campus abroad, or they do maybe a summer session. Do you have anything like that, that kind of like helps students migrate into GW?
So we do. So one of the constraints that we have at GW, and I mentioned this earlier, is housing capacity. So we're only permitted to enroll about 2,500 students a year. So for those students that we see potential, we do give them three options. They can either start off in our campus partners in Harlexton, England. They can start off at the American University of Paris. And then we have a partnership with SLU Madrid.
That's awesome. I just did an international English speaking webinar and I had AUP on there.
Who did you have?
Kate Foley.
Okay, I haven't met Kate, but we have a great partnership with AUP, and we also noticed those students that gravitate towards AUP, they are in that urban setting in Paris, France, that they adjust actually exceptionally well here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it seems like an awesome opportunity. In Harlexton, we actually visited, the Estrella team just visited University of Evansville.
Yes, that's our partner.
Yeah, yeah. So they own Harlexton College, which was super cool.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for an English castle experience, that is a great way to go. It's so cool. So that's really neat. Well, that's good because we actually have a running list of colleges that do an alternate start program. So I'm going to make sure that my colleagues know about this as well. So our last thing, and this is totally your call, so this doesn't have to be
Sure.
consensus at GW. This can be who you've maybe experienced or your take on this. Who is the most exciting guest or speaker that you've had on campus? And if that's a hard question, you can say, who do you think is the most interesting GW alum?
So I'll give you an example. When I arrived at GW, roughly 2 years before I arrived, some of the guest speakers that they had on campus was the president of France. They had Kerry Washington, who's actually an alum and was kind enough to make a $1 million donation to the liberal arts scholarship that we have at GW. They've had Chef Jose Andres, which I'm a huge fan of. And in fact, I've probably eaten at most of his restaurants. And I'm pretty sure I'm maintaining his mortgage at Haleo in DC just because I go that often. But I asked our students, hey, tell me some of your favorite guest speakers. And some of the ones that they brought up in the last 2 years was we recently had Kevin Rudd, the former Prime Minister of Australia, on campus.
Oh, cool.
Most of our students loved Kerry Washington, not most, all. We've had Veronica Cruz of Las Libres. We had Vice President Kamala Harris. We recently had the president of Peru. The one that all of our students loved that pleasantly surprised me because I wasn't expecting it in business was they had Kim Kardashian.
Interesting.
So I think that's a great thing with this, Allison, is there's so many unique individuals that are coming to Washington, D.C. And with majority of our faculty members still being practitioners in their field and still having a full-time job, they're able to bring these guest speakers to GW that you won't find at other institutions.
It's a pretty impressive lineup, Freddie. I mean, I was typing those and I'm just like, wow, that's amazing. So, and I agree. If whether you love or hate the Kardashians, you cannot deny their business savvy and their marketability. I mean, they make money. So,
They're incredible. They're incredible
yeah,
at what they do.
definitely. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time and for kicking us off. I think you set the bar high, so I don't think you have to worry about that. But I really appreciate getting to know you and for you taking the time to share a little bit with us about GW. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And again, we've had such a great relationship with Estrella Consulting for the last couple of years. Looking forward to continuing another great partnership and being able to better assist your families with this process at GW.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. Well, take care and have a great rest of your summer.
You as well. Take care, Allison.
Bye bye.